Well, hello again. We're getting closer to Christmas, and one of the exciting things for me about Christmas is that this event is part of the great abundance of evidence that points to the reality of God. That there is a God who is love, who has made this world and created you and me, that loves us, and has stepped into history to deal with the problem of sin and evil and suffering. You'll notice at this stage that I didn't just say that we have evidence for the existence of a God or of a divine entity. You see, in some respects, we all kind of know that there is something greater than us, that there has to be a foundation, a first cause. That's not really in contention. But also the whole question of is there a God only makes sense and is only really relevant to us if that God is a particular kind of God. Uh, you know, uh, if there is a divine entity, a first cause, but it's impersonal, unknowable, and indifferent to this world, then it doesn't really matter whether that entity exists or not. It's irrelevant to us. But it is only because we claim as Christians to know a God who is a loving God, who is an active God, and has got involved in history, that is a personal God that we can know. It's only because of that that it actually matters that this God is true and knowable. And Christmas points to that because it's in the person of Jesus being born in Bethlehem that we see that God is real and we see what God is like. Look again with me at the words of one of John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, there you will remember from last time is a description of something or somebody referred to as the Word. But later on in the chapter, in verse 14, John tells us that the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. In other words, this is Jesus. Jesus is the one who became flesh, became human, and lived a human life. And John has just told us that Jesus was there at the beginning with God, but more than that, that he was God. Now, some people find that a bit of a dilemma. How can something or someone be with God, in the presence of God, and at the same time be God? Surely it's one or the other. Jehovah's Witnesses have a problem with that. They also get a bit confused about the grammar here, and so they start talking about Jesus being a God. We're not going to go into that technical stuff here. You can read about it if you go to faithroot.com, go to publications, you find a publication called Who is God, and it talks about that in more detail. But what I want to do today is just show you something important and significant so that we get this clear in our minds that John is not just saying that Jesus was a God with a small g, a lesser being, more exalted than human beings, an angelic type spiritual being, one of the heavenly hosts. John is not saying that. No, John is saying that God himself stepped down into history in the person of Jesus. Again, we're not going to get too technical here, but you can read up in Who is God. But that description of Jesus being both God and being with God points us to the doctrine of the Trinity. that there is one God in three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and that Jesus is one of those persons, that Jesus is the Son who was with the Father and with the Holy Spirit at the beginning. But if he is God, possesses the fullness of divinity. And the evidence for that is here in this very passage. You see, John says this: all things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Now, have a look at this diagram with me. This is very important. You see, there are only two categories that really exist when it comes down to it: the creator and the created. And you'll see I've represented them here, a line dividing them to say you belong either in the top half of the picture there as part of the creator, or in the bottom half as part of the created. And what John is saying is that everything was made by and through God and for his glory. The creator is the one who creates, and he creates everything. Nobody is here by chance or by their own effort. We all owe our existence to that one creator. So if I owe my existence to the creator, I am a creature. I am finite. I am not the creator. I can't put myself up in this category up here, nor is there a kind of overlapping category. And that's very important as well, because if Jesus is the creator, he belongs in this top category. He is not created. He is the one who creates. Notice that John says this, that everything was made through him and that nothing was made without him. In other words, all of us, human beings, and all of the creation around us owe our existence to Jesus. If nothing was made without him, that means that there are no entities, no beings, no physical material things or spiritual things sort of hovering around in another category, made by God but not made by Jesus. Everything is made by him. In other words, Jesus can't fall into an intermediate category either. Jesus belongs completely on the top side of the line. He is the creator. There's another little clue here. That's when you go to the next verse. Verse 4 says, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. John 5 will pick up on this again. Again, there are two categories of being. There are beings that receive life from the outside, life, breath breathed into them. That's you and me. We are completely dependent on God for every breath that we make, every breath we take. It is God that has breathed life into us. It's his breath in our lungs. Without God, you would be dead. Doubly so, you would have not been created and brought into life in the first place. But also we owe our life now, life, resurrection, life free from sin, new life, so that we are no longer dead in sin. We owe that to God and to Jesus. So category 1, those that receive life, receive the breath of life from outside and are dependent. And category 2, those that have life within themselves, that don't need to receive the breath of life from another because it is part of their very nature. They are eternally alive. And again, we're seeing that Jesus belongs in that category. Jesus is not dependent on anybody or anything for his life. He has life in himself. Jesus is eternal. Jesus is self-sufficient. Jesus, therefore, is unchanging. Jesus is one that can't be conquered or manipulated from outside. So again, he is God. And so the beautiful thing about Christmas that we're seeing here is that we know that there is a God who is love, who is involved in this creation, because in Jesus, God stepped into history. In Jesus, God showed us what he is like, showed us his love, showed us his power, showed us his holiness, and brought salvation. We're going to come back to these verses again over the next couple of weeks, just to be reminded again and again of the greatness and the goodness and the love of God demonstrated at Christmas in Jesus.